Hello. Today we're going to talk about the Tower of Babel. So the Tower of Babel, you may know about, you may not, but it's an iconic symbol of the communication, in the beginning, very good, smooth communication, and then the destruction of communication and the lack of information transfer. These are various pictures that different civilizations have written about the Tower of Babel, or drawn about the Tower of Babel. So it's been used in many different cultures. And I don't know why, but it seems that was always a strong urge to reach to the heavens. This one is from an Islamic tradition, a more Christian tradition. I don't know if it's Greek or Jewish, and even Hungarian traditions. They've all had their towers. And the point of the towers was to reach to the heavens, to try to find what's up there, or just to, I don't know, to see God or whatever. But the point is that these people here were able to communicate. They were communicating so well that they were able to build these towers. Now, this is not a small task. These towers were massive, and there are ruins of many of these still. But my point today is the power of communication. They were able to communicate, they were able to share information, and they were able to, therefore, work together. Now, what happened is that the god or supreme being in this mythological story came down and distributed the people to various parts of the world and made them all speak different languages. When you're speaking different languages, you find it hard to communicate. So this is my point, is that this stopped the work. Now what have we done since then? Just start thinking about it, because this will come full circle to the end of my talk. Communication, seamless communication, leads to the construction of something great. It could be a culture or a civilization. So, the separate cultures evolved. We have separate cultures all over the world, as you see here. There were separate cultures, and they were very separate. And that's great. They developed beautiful cultures, lovely languages, and language is such an important part of culture. And these were developing for, I think that was 4,000 years ago, and over the years, some of these were more separate than others. Machu Picchu probably had no visitors for many years. And so that's fine. People were developed, they were in their own separate areas, but there was a certain amount of globalization that took place even back then, the Silk Road, trade routes. So people would come through, they couldn't communicate, there was a lack of communication, but usually there was some sort of conduit through to another language or another culture, and this one person would become very important, the translator. But the rest of the people were left in the dark, and there was, there wasn't anything great, global civilization being built. So globalization had people all over speaking all these different languages. What was the next step? Well, in this sort of analog communication problem, this low-level globalization, emperors came in, and the emperors would establish their area and take over maybe some of these people who were speaking different languages and had different cultures, and a sort of a meta-language evolved, like the British Empire. Well, that was much later. Or, the Mongol or whatever, the Ottoman, the different empires came in. And this sort of basic language took over a meta-language of sorts, but it still didn't give seamless communication. And then we go on to the digital globalization, the age of digitization. All right, now we have great connections. It's not, we didn't have to wait for one explorer or one person to visit our village. We could communicate incredibly quickly. The people in Japan could talk to those in Brazil, but could they? They didn't have the same language. So we're seeing a lag. There's a great lag in the development of this cross-language, cross-lingual information going on. It just isn't catching up with the technology that allows us to communicate. So this has been a problem. I mean, you know, I'm the dean of the library here. I see it all the time. We are able to communicate and use texts in languages that we know. Languages we don't know, there's some work being done on translation. But it's very, very crude and infantile, and it has not been happening as it should. 55% of these have content in English. These are devices, but databases. 55% the content is in English. So English is growing to be a more universal language, but there's also the Spanish, the Chinese, the Russian. How many languages are you going to learn? You know, it's, if we're really going to become a global village, which was Marshall McLuhan's intention back in the 60s, before any of this happened, he was already thinking ahead about how we can have a global village, but we aren't making much progress with the, in the field of language. And I think, as was mentioned before, we need to work more with artificial intelligence. We need to get some good translation going, and not just person to person, even using text, the translation of text. We're falling behind. We're leaving out a lot of the world. We're segmenting people. But translation is a solution, whether it's a person translation or a or translation by machine. For instance, Global Translate has done minimal amount of work.
Hello.
Здравствуйте.
Привет.
Hi.
All right, so that's pretty crude, you know, and it is developing. You can use these programs. You can talk to each other. You know, your friend is in China, and you both have this apps on your phone. But it's really it's pretty basic, and we need to work on it. The semantic web is not set up. The semantic web for, say, even English and Russian or English and Spanish is much more developed. But if you go to smaller languages, it just isn't there yet. And in terms of interactivity, that wasn't very interactive. This will show you, this is Skype has done something, translation work that's much more interactive. I'll just show you this little clip.
Hi, can you guess where I live?
¿Te encuentras en América del Norte?
Yes. Do you live in central Mexico?
Sí. ¿Te encuentras en Estados Unidos de América?
Yes. Do you live in a capital city?
Sí. ¿Estás cerca de Seattle?
You're very close to Seattle. Are you in Mexico City?
Sí. ¿Estás en Tacoma?
Yes. Very good guess.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Do you like living in Mexico City?
¿Te gusta vivir en la Ciudad de México?
Aquí está muy lindo.
Here is very nice.
What do you do for fun?
¿Qué haces para divertirte?
Voy a las playas de México.
I'm going to the beaches of Mexico.
I like to swim.
Me gusta nadar.
A mí también.
Me too.
Where in the world do you wish to travel?
¿A dónde en el mundo te gustaría viajar?
A Rusia.
To Russia.
¿Y tú?
And you?
Everywhere.
Sería increíble algún día verte en México.
It would be amazing to see you someday in Mexico.
I would really like to visit you sometime.
Me gustaría mucho visitarte algún día.
A mí también.
Me too.
So, I think we will look back and think that's very primitive and very crude within 5 or 10 years. I hope so. I'd like to see a global village where we're all able to communicate seamlessly. This sort of information transfer that would be available would help us go back and become those people who were able to build the Tower of Babel.